All right, you ever wondered why, and I'm talking to the folks in the United States. You ever wondered why it feels that even with all of this medical innovation, it still feels impossible to get appropriate care? Like we live in quote unquote the greatest country right in the world, and it still feels like it's impossible to get affordable care, accurate care, appropriate care, timely care. And you may be saying like, man, this healthcare system is so broken. But I got some news for you, y'all, and you might not want to hear this, but it's actually not broken. It's actually working attended like it's supposed to, right? Like it's working as intended. And that is the problem. As a physician, it hurts when I know that, hey, the treatment option you're looking for, yeah, that sounds good. I don't think you're going to be able to get that. And it's not like I don't think it's available. I just don't think it's available to you. And I think that is the scary thing when we think about healthcare and we think about the lack of health access, that a lot of times it's not like it's this imaginary, treatment option or treatment regimen that we might have heard about or we might have read about in a journal. No, like it's something that they offer it right down the street from your house. You just can't get it for a lot of reasons. You just can't get that. Like that's not made for you. That's not available for you. And I think we have to talk about it if we are going to be serious about getting ourselves together, right? And as a healthcare physician who talks to a lot of patients, who educates a lot of patients, shout out to my Lunch and Learn community, who has a community who likes listening to this guy talk about healthcare things, right? We have to be honest with ourselves. This healthcare system isn't broken. It is working exactly like it's supposed to. And we should all have a problem with that. All right, y'all. And I gotta be honest. This is the reality, right? I know we talk about, again, especially I'm talking to my USA citizens and all, right? Like this is the reality. We live in a country that spends trillions of dollars a year, trillion with a T, trillions of dollars a year, and yet we rank last among all of the high income countries for access, equity, and outcomes. Last, dead last. Not like we're fighting for one or two. No, we are dead last in access, equity, and outcomes. And we spend way more than a lot of the countries who are above us. Again, and it's not, again, I wish I could say this, and I'm going to keep saying this during this episode. It's not a glitch, right? It's embedded into our system, right? Our system, this country, obviously, we know has been founded on inequality and, blocking of access, lack of access. This is what this whole country was based on. So we shouldn't be shocked that our healthcare system also benefits from the foundations that our country is based on. But what I don't want to see is people being shocked when you hear that we are like in the end, bottom tier when it comes to healthcare, bottom tier when it comes to access, bottom tier when it comes to equity and outcomes. I don't want no one to be shocked by that. If you're in the Lunch and Learn community, you should not be shocked by this. This is not a thing that this is the first time you heard it, right? Unless this is your first time catching an episode, right? Like this is one of these things that I've been screaming from the rooftops, and I'm on the inside asking myself, man, what is happening here? Like, how did we get to the point where we are bottom, even though we're spending all of this money? We're spending all of this money here, right? And we are all the way at the bottom when it comes to rankings, right? Perfect example. Family with insurance receives a emergency room bill for $6,000. An elderly patient can wait months for treatments due to their insurance network and someone not being in coverage. A new mom and dad is sent home because they don't have paid leave, and their hospital bill was much more than they were expecting, right? This is what happens every single day. People are walking into situations where, you know what? I got a cold, I got some chest pain, some chest discomfort. Let me check myself out, make sure I'm okay. And they're walking out with a bill that it just hits them across the face, and they're more hurt, more sick about the bill they got than what sent them to the emergency room in the first place. You got people who are on fixed incomes, our elderly people who are on fixed incomes are receiving ridiculous amounts of bills. And even if they have the access, oh no, this person doesn't cover this insurance, they don't require that insurance, you got to go over here, right? This is the reality that is happening. And we have to, again, if we are going to be honest with ourselves, if we're empathetic with what should happen, that is something that should not occur, right? We should not be living in a country where we spend this much money, but the access of care is like piss poor to the bottom. 1 in 3 Americans skip necessary care because of cost. And I've talked about this before. when they skip the necessary regimen, they skip the necessary checkups, guess what? It's not like the illness goes away. You know what happens? Something happens later on where they're forced to enter the healthcare system. And now what probably could have been taken care of with maybe a pill a day, for 10 years. Now we're talking about, hey, you're about to go on dialysis, right? This is reality. I talked about this in the past where I had my patient who didn't see a healthcare provider for 10 years, was told they had high blood pressure, didn't think nothing of it because they felt great. And they come to see me, still got high blood pressure, but I do some lab work. And all of a sudden, not only do you have high blood pressure, your kidneys are failing. Oh, and by the way, you happen to be a raging diabetic. That's why you've lost all of this weight in the past few months. And I got to send you to this specialist and that specialist because I'm concerned you may be having a heart attack soon. I'm concerned that you may need to go on dialysis soon. This is the reality when 1 in 3 Americans are skipping care because they are afraid of the initial cost shock that's going to hit them. We live in a country where that should not occur. Unfortunately, we live in a country where it occurs every single day. What are we going to do about it? Like if we are not upset at that fact, then I don't know what to do, right? I'm in the healthcare field and I'm upset for my patients. For my patients, I'm upset for them. And I'm a healthcare provider who can afford these things, but I don't want to have to be able to afford these things to be like, okay, let me act like it's not a big deal. No, it's a big deal because the majority of patients I may take care of may not be able to afford a $6,000 bill that comes to them in the next 2 weeks. That's just a medical bill. The majority of Americans, if they got a healthcare bill for $5,000 right now. In fact, if you're listening, if you're watching my YouTube or listening to the podcast, if you got a $5,000 bill right now, would you be like, oh, okay, that's cool? Or would that literally mess you up for like, I'm going to give it 3 months. I'll just say 3 months. It's probably going to mess up people for the whole year, but like, I'll just say 3 months, right? To be generous. So we can't keep acting like this is a singular problem. This only happens to certain people. Like, no, there are different demographics where it hurts them in so many different ways. But unfortunately, the way our healthcare system works, it's working to perfection. And that's a problem. All right. So I want y'all to stick with me for a little bit, right? Because I think the more we realize like how this thing works, the more we realize like, all right, we got to do something about this. I remember I think I was a medical student. Yeah, I was a medical student at the time. And I'm sitting here just trying to, I'm just trying to get through the semester. I'm just trying to get through the semester and figure out like, all right, how am I going to get through this next exam? Because at the time at Nova, we used to have we would have a break at the beginning of the semester. And then there was a time frame where every week you would have an exam. So it'd be midterm final. Like that's how it kind of went. Nova, shout out to Nova. But I remember thinking that when you start thinking about just everything that comes into medicine, right? Whether it's paying for the medication, seeing the doctor, getting a copay to see the specialist, getting a copay to do that procedure. And I'm just at the time, I'm a poor medical student. I'm just like calculating like, man, like this is normal, right? This is how it like has to happen. And everyone was like, yeah. Everyone was content with the fact that the amount of steps it took to go from point A, right, to point Z in your medical care, right, costs a lot of money. And if it didn't cost a lot of money, there were a lot of hurdles, right? Maybe you had to go to the doctor who was 20 miles away because that was the only doctor who took your insurance, or the only doctor who had an appointment that wasn't 6 months down the road, right? Access, right? Again, you could have insurance, but if you can't see a doctor because there's no available, right, for 3 to 6 months, like it's as if you don't have insurance. Like think about this, right? Again, because I know some people will focus on the financial aspect of it, but finances, yeah, and they play a big factor. Access plays just as big a factor. Outcomes play just as big a factor. And guess what? In the United States, we're down at the bottom. We're down at the bottom for all of that. We got a lot of problems, right? Pick your fighter. Access, equity, outcomes, we're losing across the board. And I realized this as a medical student. So imagine when I became an attending, and now I'm on the other side, like I'm an attending, but now I can see like, all right, this is how authorizations work. This is how copays work. Like, man, this is what my mom and dad had to deal with. Oh my God, this is crazy. Like, and if they got to deal with it, how does everybody else deal with this? Right. So it was very, very eye-opening experience as a medical student, just realizing that like being healthy was almost like a full-time job. And more importantly, what we call this healthcare system is like this merry-go-round of profit-driven systems based off the back of the physician, which I will always argue that it's amazing that it takes a physician to go to, undergrad, then medical school, then residency, and finish for all of these systems that are billion-dollar systems to be like hyped up around that physician, but that physician doesn't make the type of money that the other systems make, right? Let's think about this, right? You got hospitals, insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, right? There's middleman, there's billers. Everyone wants to charge. Everyone's making backs. Everyone's making margins, right? Everyone is trying to get their last dollar, right? And then who foots the blame? The patient. Who foots the blame? Right? The doctor, right? Typically, right? Like it's because those are the only two people you can really see, right? Because you don't know who the CEO of your insurance company is. You don't know who the CEO of your pharmaceutical company is. You don't know who is the director of the ER or who runs the billing. Like you don't know these things. These aren't common things, but you know what? You know that, hey, I know Dr. Pierre. And I know that Dr. Pierre says I got to pay him like a $60 copay. That's crazy, right? That's all you can see, right? You're not saying Blue Cross is making me pay a $60 copay so they can make billions of dollars every quarter. Like that's not a thing that like pops up to most patients. It's like the doctor wants $60 just to go see him. I'm not going to see him. Like that doctor's crazy. Like that's what happens, right? And that's where a lot of these origin stories. I've talked about this before. And for people who are like, especially like a lot of these like motivation stories, the amount of them, right? And just keep an eye on it yourself, right? Don't believe me. Watch how many stories, and again, I think I notice it more because I'm a physician. How many of these stories start out with this origin, like there is this physician who wouldn't approve this treatment option, or this physician who said, like, oh no, you got to do this versus that. Like, how many origin stories are out there based off like this physician being seen as, this evil party when it was likely an insurance company, a pharmaceutical company, 10 middlemen in the way that caused you not to get that treatment, that caused you not to get that medication, that caused you to have to try to think of 10 different options to do what you need to do, right? Like it's just comical, but again, it is the system that we are in, that we have to deal with in this healthcare system. And we have to be able to put a name to it, right? And we have to stop giving it an out to say like, oh, no, the system is broken. Because if the system was working right, it wouldn't work this way. No, the system is working exactly like it's supposed to, right? Because that's how those who are making this ridiculous amounts of profit within the system, I can tell you it's not the physicians, continue to make it. All right, so I think if you don't get nothing, right? If we try to summarize like, hey, what are some solutions? The day you recognize that, hey, this system is not working in my best interest. The day you start treating your healthcare like a business transaction, like a transaction, because that's what it is. And this is why like people like look at me funny, but I call patients customers, right? And as a customer, and if you're on the other side, as a customer, you got to realize like, hey, this store isn't treating me right. I don't like the way this store is treating me, aka the healthcare system. And if it's not treating me way, I'm going to say something. I'm going to point out why it's not treating me right. But you can't point out why it's not treating you right if you don't know that it's not treating you right. Thankfully, you watch a Medicine Mondays like this. You listen to a podcast. You listen to people like Dr. Pierre who are like, hey, you know what? Dr. Pierre says, I got to get myself together, right? Like, I got to understand. Like, ask yourself right now, just talk to yourself in your head. Hey, if I were to look at my insurance coverage, I'm assuming you have insurance, right? Just assuming you have insurance. Like, would I be able to understand what all of those terms means? Like deductible, copay, in-network, out-of-network, who's my PCP, who can I go to? Like, which hospital am I allowed to go to? Like, would I understand that? Like, is that something that like I would need to know? Perfect example. I remember with our first child, no, twins, with the twins. No, it was the first child, where we had been seeing this OB-GYN, right? For as long as we've been seeing them, right? It was my wife's favorite OB-GYN. Loved it. But didn't realize that the insurance that we had, the hospital that the OB-GYN goes to, our insurance did not cover that. Think about that. So they covered the doctor, right? The insurance company covered the doctor, but they didn't cover any procedures that the doctor happened to do because they didn't have a contract with that specific hospital. Imagine telling your pregnant wife, hey, you might have to switch OBs because our insurance company is not going to cover you having that baby at this hospital. It wasn't a very fun sight. We got it taken care of. It wasn't a very fun conversation. But this is the reality, right? This is the maze that is put in front of you. So when I want us, right, to be, again, empower yourself for better health, we have to be our own personal advocates. We have to understand that this system is supposed to work for us, not the other way around. We have rights that we should be able to demand when we don't think the system is working in our favor, because the system should work in your favor. It should work in your favor, right? You shouldn't have to start another origin story about how the healthcare system and the doctor, right, just was totally against it. Like, you shouldn't do that. Like, that shouldn't happen, but it does all the time. And I think that's where, as a healthcare provider, just what I do here, this is why I like to scream from the rooftops, right? Because I want you guys to recognize that, hey, there are people on this side who recognize that it's a problem. So you don't think that, like, oh no, it's just me, like I'm the only one dealing with this issue. No. A lot of people are dealing with this issue. A lot of people are dealing with this problem. And fortunately, you have advocates on both sides, the consumer side, aka you, the patient, but on the provider side, right, who are willing to stand for you and make sure you get the best care that you're supposed to get. All right, so today we talked about a conversation that I think needed to be talked about. We really, took the cat out the bag. Like, hey, yes, this healthcare system, the way it's built, the way it's, funky, where you have to have insurance denial after insurance denial, where you're going to your primary care's office and they're double booked, triple booked, right? Where you have to waste a whole day to have one appointment, where you have to hope and pray that they'll take your medication, allow you to go to a certain facility or hospital because it's closer to you. I don't ever want you to say that, man, this healthcare system is so broken, right? That's why all of these things are happening. No, I want you to say, hey, you know what? This healthcare system is working as intended, but I'm going to demand that it works in my favor. This isn't like I have to just accept what's happening. This is hey, like, I don't like what's happening, and I'm going to fight to make sure, right? Because we got plenty of rules and regulations to make sure patients have their rights. I'm going to fight to make sure that I get what I deserve. Because at the end of the day, this is what I tell my patients, aka my customers, at the end of the day, this could be a life or death decision. And I hate to be morbid like that, but it's the truth. This could be a life or death decision on whether you are an advocate for yourself and making sure you are getting the best health care for you and your family and your loved ones. This could be a life or death decision. And if I'm telling y'all, I'm not putting no life or death decisions in the hands of a C-suite member who's just looking at their quarterly sheets to make sure that they make billions of dollars every quarter. Ain't happening. Not me. And if you follow Lunch and Learn Community, you've been following the podcast, the YouTube, whatever, right? You understand that I'm not going to let anyone who can hear my voice, right, fall into that same death trap as well.